This week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry with agriculture broadcasters Orion Samuelson and Max Armstrong, and featuring agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier. This week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Case IH and your local Case IH dealer. Coming up on this weekend's broadcast, we are just days away from a government estimate of how much got planted this spring or how much didn't get put in. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this weekend's broadcast. It's a privilege to be alongside Mr. Pearson here as we greet you and cover the landscape of agriculture.
Indeed, Max. Pleasure to have you back in the studio. And yes, this next week we're going to get the final planting report from USDA on June 30th. There's been so much uncertainty about how much crop got in the ground, not just in the Corn Belt, but really across the country. There are questions, and we got to figure out what's going on.
Well, you won't find a better source to visit with than a farm broadcaster. We're going to do that this weekend to find out what's happening in that extreme northern part of the country in North Dakota. Kara Hart joins us from the Red River Farm Network. Kara, who is also vice president of the National Association of Farm Broadcasting this year. How are you doing, Kara?
Hello, Max. I'm well. How are you?
We're doing well. I'm worried about your farmers, though. I know it's been a very challenging year thus far. How much of the acreage did not get planted in your part of the world?
Oh, isn't that the million-dollar question this year, Max? I think we're all eager to find out. But I'll be honest with you, I don't think that this upcoming acreage report coming up at the end of June may give us the final response, or even, the prevent plant numbers that start to come out later on this summer. I think we're going to have to wait until the fall. At least that's what they say, to get a handle. There was so much incentive to plant a crop, right? I mean, commodity prices are good. Farmers wanted to plant a crop. It was just a very delayed planting season. So, we had complications with some of that.
You were traveling this week. You were over at the port of Duluth. I saw some of your posts in the social media. What were you doing there?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Max. Man, what an opportunity. The Northern Crops Institute, located in Fargo, North Dakota, hosted a 2-day tour of the Port of Duluth Superior. Myself, along with 14 other agriculture professionals, had the chance to go tour the port. And if you've ever been to Duluth, the famous lift bridge. That's really kind of neat. There is a role that port plays in northern agriculture. There's durum and spring wheat, and sometimes flax, and I think canola maybe that moves out of that port. So there's an agriculture connection at that Port of Duluth. So we got to take a closer look at that. Now, some of the ocean-going vessels in the past, that port has loaded out ocean vessels to go to Europe or to North Africa, at least for the durum and spring wheat customers. Some of that business has shifted due to supply chain issues and the COVID pandemic. And the cost of transportation too. It's cheaper at times to rail product, domestically than it is to send up and go. And that's changed the landscape at the Port of Duluth. And there's a whole team of people working to try to keep agriculture at the front and center at that port. And they're coming up with some very creative ways, possibly expanding a little bit and doing more with container shipping. And there's not, of course, a ton of that happening. We saw the first maritime container shipments go out about a month ago, a shipment of dry beans that went out. And they really want to build on some of that. Now, they don't see that port as being the go-to for everyone. They understand it's going to be a smaller player, but a little bit more niche. But they'd like to see that grow and develop. So that's encouraging to me, that you see that local channel for ag exports. And I think sometimes it's easy, if you live in the Northern Plains, to think about our ag exports going out of the Pacific Northwest, and a lot of it is. But I think we forget at times the Port of Duluth has a role to play as well.
Transportation is so critical to your farmers, as it is to many farmers across the country. Thanks for sharing the story with us this weekend, Carol. We appreciate it.
Oh, Max, thank you so much for having us. We always enjoy being a part of the program. And a shout out to, I know there's a lot of folks where I grew up in Missouri that tune into this. Jana Curry is one of those that follow along, and I want to give her a shout out today if she's watching. She's a big This Week in Agribusiness follower. So thanks, everyone.
We'll have them all. Kara Hart, Red River Farm Network, joining us this weekend on This Week in Agribusiness.
This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. The Firestone Ag Dealer Network offers you the support, inventory, and resources you need. Visit firestoneag.com to find your local certified dealer. And it's time to look at the markets. Joining us this week is Cesar Cruz. He's the Director of Research at ATI. Cesar, thanks for joining us this week.
Thanks for having us here, Mike. It's a pleasure to talk to you again.
Well, let's talk about this corn market. First and foremost, Cesar, as you look at the export demand here over the summer, do you think it's going to accelerate?
Well, it's a hard question, Mike, but we are seeing that China is very low. We have exports for other countries like Mexico. They are still strong, but we depend a lot on how China is going to recover during the second semester.
And how does that look in China? I understand there are concerns that they're slowing back down. This COVID still a fear. Is that one of the things weighing on your analysis?
Exactly. So especially for beans, I think China is very low. We're seeing China 8% below what they demand from us from last year, and it's mainly due to COVID. We know several big cities like Shanghai are still restricting. They are still like a severe lockdown, and things are coming back constantly. So there is a lot of uncertainty. So because of that, I think China is still very low in their demand, and we're not sure about what can happen on the second semester. So for that reason, we are not expected to see a very strong demand coming from China.
All right. Is there going to be enough demand from Mexico or some of those other partners you mentioned to make up for it, do you think?
We hope so, but we also have to take into account what's happening in other competitors like South America corn. Brazil is producing a very decent size corn production this year. Their second corn crop is going to be decent high. We are not expecting that there are going to be a lot of surprises anymore. So we have to keep our eyes open on prices. Brazil, South America, Argentina, they still are very competitive related to the US. So some of those countries, they can offer China better prices, and they are very competitive in the international market.
And Cesar, we have certainly seen Brazil continue to expand its crop acreage in response to these higher prices throughout the globe. Is that a trend you think is going to continue down in Brazil? Are they going to put more acres in the ground at next fall?
They probably will, but it also depends on fertilizer prices. Fertilizer prices are very high everywhere in the world. Brazilians, they look at their prices, seeing how many bushels or how many bags they need to buy to sell to buy a certain number of tons of fertilizers, and that number is very high right now. They are very high, so they need to produce more to buy more fertilizers, meaning that they can probably expand their acreage, but we are not sure about what's going to happen to their yield. If they can buy fertilizer for a good price, they probably are going to have a very good crop next year, not only for corn, but also for beans.
Cesar, keeping the focus on Brazil there for a little bit longer, as you look at their export program here so far this year, have you been impressed with how well the Brazilian exporters have been keeping up with demand?
Yeah, absolutely. They are exporting much more than expected. They are doing very good. They're doing a very good job for beans, corn especially. We actually are very surprised with the amount of corn Brazil is exporting. Here, on the other hand, in the U.S., we are very concerned about our numbers. Mainly because of China, because of our dependence on China for beans. Yes, you're right. The exchange rate also in South America, Brazil, and Argentina is playing their favor. So there might be another reason they are more competitive than the U.S. right now.
All right, lots of things to keep an eye on. We've got an acreage report coming out at the end of the month, in addition to all of the inflationary pressures happening in the market. When This Week in Agribusiness comes back, we're going to continue that conversation with Cesar Cruz of ATI. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone Ag. Harvey Firestone invented the first pneumatic farm tire, forever changing what it means to farm hard. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more about this history and tire solutions for today. We're back talking markets with Cesar Cruz of ATI. He is their director of research. Cesar, as we get it to the end of this month, USDA is going to release their final planting data. And my goodness, that is going to be watched closely. We've had so many struggles this year with the planting season. How do you think those numbers are going to work out here on the soybean crop?
That's a good question, Mike. Yeah, that's a good, very important report coming up next week. We are not estimating a big change. We are going to be following the USDA close to 89.5 million acres for corn. We are going to be a little bit above the USDA number with 92 million acres for soybeans. And I think July is going to be a very important month for us to have our expectations for what is coming for beans and corn for this year.
That 92 million acres in soybeans, that is a big crop. That would be a record, right, Cesar, if that is the amount of acres we put in the ground in beans?
You're right. Yeah, it's going to be a big crop, and hopefully going to have good yields also, depending on the weather for next month. We are seeing that weather is playing a very big role in our estimates here. Everybody is concerned about what's going to happen in the I states for next month.
You know, that is the big wild card, of course, as we get into summer and start to see these temperatures fluctuate and storms move across. What's this yield going to be? And I know it's very early in the season, Cesar, but USDA has a final yield number they're looking at. Where do you think this number is going to come in on the corn market?
For the corn market, we're actually expecting to have yields a little bit higher, maybe between 178, 79. So we are confident, expecting that the weather is going to be good for next year. Right now, you're seeing that the weather here in the Corn Belt is the heat is not as bad as we expected for this week. So for the last part of June, you're expecting to see lower temperatures than we initially expected, so that can help our yield. And the main thing now is what's going to happen. Are we going to have enough rain for the rest of July? We hope so, and we're expecting that yields are going to be very good this year.
All right, and good yields, strong prices out there in the countryside could be a good year for farmers, but I'm curious, Cesar, on the flip side, those strong prices for growers mean high prices for end users. Are we entering a period of demand destruction for those that use corn?
Well, there'll be, of course, higher prices. We are seeing a lot of inflation, both on the demand and the supply side. We probably going to have a strong demand coming from the buyer side for the rest of the year. And we can probably expect higher prices for the end users also. You're not seeing that prices are going to be lower for us, final consumers, for the last part of the year.
Cesar, while we're in that vein, for those end users, whether it's an ethanol plant or a feedlot, how far should corn prices drop before they get in there and aggressively buy? Are you watching for a 5–10% correction to secure some needs?
Maybe hard to say. What I can tell you about prices is that I think both producers and final users, they should be aware that prices can fluctuate a lot. Not only because what we see here in the U.S., what we see in South America, we also can't forget that we have a conflict going on in Europe. And what is going to happen between Russia and Ukraine can also define final prices. So the message is that they should be hedging, they should be aware that prices can fluctuate, and that can make their margins go very low. So good lesson that we have learned for multiple years is that we should be hedging our prices.
All right, hedge when you can, not when you have to, folks. That's Cesar Cruz, ATI Director of Research.
Chad Colby's look at agriculture technology comes your way next, brought to you by the IBM Watson Decision Platform, combining AI with Internet of Things data to help agribusiness increase yields, improve quality, and drive sustainability. I have a feeling there are some counties in the Midwest where farmers call each other and they say, I just saw him going down your road. Chad Colby may be coming to see what you have hooked up over there. He shares with us another story this weekend in his technology segment.
With the crops all planted, most farmers have been out, got their crops all fed as well. This past week, I stopped at the Foes farm, and one thing I noticed on Matt Foes' side dress bar, and knowing Matt as well as I do, it doesn't surprise me, he changed his application style again.
Yes, I'm always changing something, never satisfied, I guess. But in the past, this bar had been wide drop only. Drag hoses at the row, applying it all there worked very well. But I wanted to use placement and timing to stagger the fertilizer for the crop over the course of the summer. So with coulters back onto the unit and the dual delivery system available from Unverferth, I was able to get the best of both worlds, where I was putting some at the row and some in the coulter, and stagger the availability.
Matt, I noticed the orifices on this. Talk a little bit about that split. How does that work?
So on each unit, there is 2 valves. One valve will go to the drag hoses alongside the row. One valve goes to the coulter. So you simply orifice it to where you shut one off and choose the other. The way I've got it set up right now, about 2/3 of it goes to the coulter and about 1/3 of it goes to the row.
So talk about that example from this year. Did you make any changes in season? I know we had some pretty good moisture here right after planting, which was a blessing. But then honestly, it's been a little on the dry side.
Yeah, so the first 3/4 of my side dressing, we had rain reliably in the forecast. I had both valves open. We were applying dual placement. At the end of side dressing, about a week or 10 days ago, it started to get hot, started to get dry, unreliable forecast. I shut off the drag hoses and put everything in the ground where it was not subject to volatilization as much.
I noticed you're cleaning this machine up, getting ready to put it away. I assume this is going to be your plan for 23 also, or are you going to make some other changes?
It will be the plan for the majority of acres, but there is some changes that will happen in order for a little workload balance. There will be ammonia being used on some of the heavier soil farms that can hold it. I'm only looking at 120 pounds, so it's not a full rate up front.
For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
It is interesting to see what farmers are doing to do a little bit better job in their fields. Chad finds it interesting too and zeroes in with us. We'll go back to Iowa, to a farm in the central part of the state as This Week in Agribusiness continues. Stay with us here. Oh, and Greg Solier has a forecast coming up. Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. Well, they've done it again. At Nationwide, they've awarded more of those grain rescue tubes to fire departments across the United States so that if a farmer in that area gets trapped, the responding first responders have the tool that they need to try to get that farmer out of a grain bin. Jason Birkland from Nationwide joins us this weekend to talk about it. Jason, you folks have had this program going for what, almost 8 years now, right?
Yeah, the program started in 2014, and when we started it, we were just looking at the grain publications out there, a lot of entrapments and a lot of unfortunate deaths. And we said, hey, we've got a number of associates that still work on farms, still work with flowing grain. What can we do to help? And that's how the whole initiative got started.
Those tubes, while being very effective and seemingly not terribly complicated, are somewhat expensive, especially for volunteer fire departments in many areas that are operating on pancake breakfasts and very tight budgets. And you folks have enabled these departments, many of them, I think a couple of hundred, to get these tubes over these years.
Yeah, it's been exciting. 265 since the program started, and the first year we awarded 1 tube and 1 training. So it wasn't. It's really taken off, and we've got a lot of great partners and a lot of great sponsors. And without them, we couldn't provide this life-saving equipment. The tubes are relatively expensive for a rural fire department, and that's where we need to get them. Is usually in the rural areas is where the entrapments and the unfortunate incidents are happening. So.
You mentioned training. Training is important. Our friends of the fire service train and train and train for good reason. So when they encounter something, it's almost second nature for them to respond to get that person out of trouble. And that's a part of the component here that you help fund.
Yeah, that's a big piece of it. The equipment is nice to have, but unless you know how to use it and how to do it safely, it's not valuable at all. So that's included with the award of the rescue tube is the training. We partner with NECIS, the National Education Center of Agricultural Safety, and they bring out their state-of-the-art trailer, and we'll actually do demonstrations and show the first responders and the firefighters how to operate the equipment, how to put it together correctly, and then how to safely enter bins to get that entrapped victim out. The 265 tubes over the lifespan of the initiative have covered 31 states, and we're super proud of that. The benefit, but the unfortunate part is 5 of those tubes have actually been used to rescue people from being entrapped in grain. It's good that they were able to utilize the equipment and utilize the training. The unfortunate part is we're trying to prevent the entrance and entrapment altogether.
Stay out of the bins, or if you're going in there, make sure you have help to get yourself out of there, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Work with a partner. Try to never work alone or an attendant. Don't both be in the bin. We want somebody watching outside safely in case something does happen. And then on our Think Grain Bin Safety website, we have a number of different documents that talk about safe entry, lockout, tagout, lifelines, how to keep grain in condition so that you don't have to get in the bin with anything running. And so there's a lot of materials out there to prevent the entrance of someone into a grain bin.
Think Grain Bin Safety. That's the website you mentioned, right?
That's correct.
And again, you can find all kinds of resources there. Then next year, early in the year, you'll be announcing the opportunity for these departments, these rural volunteer fire departments, to apply for one of the rescue tubes, right?
Yes, that's correct. This year we actually had 1,800 applications, so it was we were kind of swamped with the number we had to review, but it's great to see the need or the excitement around this. We want to award as many as we can. That all takes funding and sponsors and partners to try and get those awarded out to those individuals that apply for the companies, the fire departments, first responders that apply for this. So it will kick off again next year, but think about grain bin safety and entering all year round. That's really what this initiative is all about. Is we don't want to just have our grain bin safety week 1 week in February. We want everybody to think about it year round. If you're going to enter a bin, you need to do something inside of there. Let's go through the process and make sure we have plans in place so that entrapments don't happen.
Jason, when you meet volunteer firefighters, the men and women who respond to the call in their rural communities, aren't you impressed with their dedication? And some of these folks haven't just been doing this for 10 years or 20 years, but 40 years or even 50 years. Some of these veteran firefighters will say, you know what, this is a young man's game, but I continue to respond to the call. They're really dedicated, aren't they?
They are super dedicated. They understand it's their community and it's their family. I mean, if somebody's in danger or somebody's had an issue and they need to respond, they know that they're going to probably know that person and it's their family. They want to be as prepared and well trained and have the right equipment as possible so that they can save that person's life and make sure there's not a disaster in the community. So on that Think Grain Bin Safety website, we also have videos of some of the responses or some of the one of the response to an entrapment and what that meant to that community and that fire department. And Max, if you want kind of a tearjerker, that's one to pop open sometime when you got a few minutes and watch, because it's really, really well done and really, meant a lot to that community for their award of the tube and then for them to be able to safely use it and rescue someone.
Jason, thank you, and thanks to Nationwide for all that you folks are doing to keep our farmers safe. There's more coming up on This Week in Agribusiness. Stay with us here. This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Case IH.
Well, thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. Max, you have been on the road this spring, getting out there talking to growers. I know you had the chance to go to Iowa.
We thoroughly enjoy it, as you know. We get to see the farmsteads and get into some of the thinking that these growers have about how to do a better job. Our Plant Smart, Grow Smart series this weekend indeed takes us to central Iowa, not far out of the town of Nevada. what's your approach to weed control? Zero tolerance, or are you willing to let a little creep in?
We have a zero tolerance approach when it comes to our herbicide program and chemical program in general on soybeans, even to going to the extent to having multiple post passes, having a separate pass for fungicide, really wanting to make sure that we're putting every product in its best position to succeed, because we feel that weed pressure, if you let it get away, it's not a one-year fix. It becomes a multi-year problem that you have to deal with.
That's an important point, I think. You can't let it get out of hand, can you?
You cannot, and it really becomes an issue if you get lazy in approach, or if you choose to select a product that maybe underperforms, and sometimes that means you got to spend a little bit more money to do it, and that doesn't just mean it's a name brand versus a generic. Sometimes it's just a commitment to doing what's right.
Do you rely on BASF as well to control some of the weeds that you face here?
Yes, so BASF has been a great partner, not only in providing us great product technology to manage the weeds, but also great consulting and scouting efforts through our local relationship and their agronomy team.
Good stewardship over the products that you have then. Yeah.
Very much so. Stewardship is very, very key to us and very critical to success long term. We've seen resistance obviously occur on many different products, and different pests are continually getting stronger every year. Thankfully, so far, the products in BASF's lineup have performed well and have continued to put us in an optimal position to maximize returns each year.
Just talk a little bit about that multi-seasonal view, if you will, about weed control.
We try to take the long view in our approach to all things on our farm, but very much so when it comes to our chemical program and weed control. We know that when you're managing pest pressures, there's multiple options. Some work better than others, and what we've found is that being very diligent in selecting the right products, being willing to put in the extra effort for an extra pass just to manage that control, really yields great success.
What does success look like in your soybean fields, if you were asked to describe it?
Yes. Success in our soybean fields looks like clean fields that have big pods with a lot of them on it, and that we can get in the field and see the yield monitor have at least a 6 in front of it. The cost side of the equation will always be something we have to manage, but you can't pay for those without bushels. For us, we've really just seen that when you make a commitment to the crop, it normally rewards you.
We appreciate the enthusiasm and the insight of the growers with whom we visit in this series. You can see more by going online to plantsmartgrowsmart.com. Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead, presented by Pivot Bio Proven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot Bio Proven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com. There are a lot of opinions circulating around out there about how tough this summer could be for crops from a weather standpoint. We'll ask Greg Solier what he thinks about all of that. You're not calling for a widespread, more damaging drought, right?
No, not in the Corn Belt itself, you know, where we have drought going on in the western half of the plains. Yeah, that's the story that continues on. Eastern areas might see some worsening, and I know we are dry around the edges as well into parts of the Midwest Corn Belt, but we foresee better rains, easing of temperatures, and perhaps coming in the nick of time come July when things really get going and we move into the certainly tasseling, silking, reproductive stages of corn and beans. Meanwhile, in the Pacific Northwest and Northern Rockies, a whole different scenario. We've had spells of warmth and heat, and the snowmelt is now underway. So we've got some second cresting going on some of these areas, streams and rivers around the Yellowstone area and into the Pacific Northwest. But at least early on into the week, pretty quiet weather pattern. Heat down here across the Intermountain West, more seasonal temperatures and dry time into the northern plains. They're still trying to wrap up planting operations. Should be able to do so this week into the eastern Dakotas and Red River Valley of the north. Yeah, the higher peaks, still a couple of snowflakes. We get down into some cooler air, another trough moving inland. A couple of showers anticipated. Some good coverages, actually. Far Pacific Northwestern areas, spell of some heat and humidity, and a couple of showers and thunderstorms, feeling like mid to late June as it ought to be across the Dakotas for the middle to late portions of the week. Yeah, look at here. The tropics are a little busy. Saw the system come up west of Baja, now moving out across the Pacific Basin, usually in a La Nina setup. It's quiet out here, busy in the Atlantic. We'll see that later on this season. Note the monsoon moisture over the past week to 10 days. Those dew points are up and elevated. It's a humid feel for West Texas cotton and in through New Mexico. A couple of showers and thunderstorms, peak heating hours of the afternoon. You know how some of those storms operate, all or nothing, and the lightning potential as well building into the Four Corners on northward. We do cap off the atmosphere. Another round of this 95 to 100 degree heat max for areas of Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas later on into the week.
Before we leave the West, the Lake Mead challenges have been getting a lot of attention in the popular press. That's not improving much, is it?
Not at all out there. And of course, that is a trademark of this La Nina setup, and we do not foresee, and we're certainly well removed of the rainy and wet season across the west and southwest, nor does the monsoon improve that situation as well. We'll have to wait till later fall and winter. So things are not great in the west and southwest by any means. They are better from a temperature standpoint across the Corn Belt. It's really this area here. We're seeing some expanding dryness issues. The subsoils are drying out down around 4, 5, 6 inches, a little leaf will. But again, temperatures in check. Hot weather back west of the Missouri River early on into the week. And as the week wears on, here come the organized rains. First across the Dakotas, at least the Red River Valley, the western Corn Belt, Mississippi Valley, and points on west. Here's the core of the heat, more seasonal feel. And this is the first of perhaps a couple of more better coverage rain events for some of these dry areas of the Corn Belt here in the next 10 days to 2 weeks. Monsoon moisture through West Texas. Cotton is really taking a hit off the heat out here into West Texas. A little tropical system or two. No name feature, but the rains pick up South Texas. Cooler, drier air for a time into the heart of that heat wave weather pattern over the Delta region and deep south. They were 105 degrees out there last week. Here is the heat in through Kansas and Oklahoma. Thunderstorm activity with downpours max. It's finally the monsoon season, West Texas into the southwestern states.
Give us a look at the eastern part of the United States now.
All right, and we've had a couple of spells of some better coverage moisture. These cool air troughs continue into this part of the country, easing some of the dryness and drought here. Better field outdoor endeavors, easing of crop moisture requirements for now across the Midwest with more seasonal temperatures anticipated. A little dose of heat and humidity, but note the showers and thunderstorms. Northern and western Corn Belt, they'll trend heavy and severe later on into the week. And finally, over the southeastern part of the country, a couple of downpours, Gulf Coast, rainy season in through Florida, and a scattering of showers and thunderstorms as well in some of the drier areas of the Carolinas down through the Delta later in the week.
Greg Sodia is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country, presented by Pivot BioProven 40. Predictable, productive, weatherproof. Turn to a better nitrogen. Turn to Pivot BioProven 40. Learn more at pivotbio.com. Yes, he's back to take us on into the month of July. How does that corn pollination period look?
At least over the next few days here, the week to come, Max, we're getting better. First of all, regarding moisture, and where we need it in significance is probably in this particular corridor right here, 0.5 to 1. Late portion of the week, fair to good, probably about 50 to 70% coverage anticipated there. This will be the first of better coverage moisture outbreaks into the first week of July as well for this part of the Corn Belt. So we're not certainly in panic mode by any means. A little drier spell, yes. A flash drought, no. The dryness and drought continuing on here, and probably some expansion with time back into the Missouri River Valley. Note a couple of tropical downpours here. No name features. A couple of spots get 1 to 3 inches. We need some moisture here as well as back into the northeast and New England. Good coverage, downpour producing action across the southwestern part of the country. Spotty to fair coverage, 1/4 inch into the Pacific Northwest.
Well, for the week of the 4th of July, will it be as hot as a firecracker?
And we'll see if Mother Nature comes up with her own version of fireworks. And yeah, there's a brief prod of some of this heat, but it's a more progressive weather pattern, up air feature on the move out of the southeastern parts of the plains, Ohio Valley into the northeast and New England. Yeah, 95 or better expected. Normal temperatures down here across the southwest. A little sliver of cooler than average weather. No big deal in the Pacific Northwest, where we do get another round or two of moisture along with additional snow melt, of course. So Some issues with streams and rivers continuing on there. The severe weather potential, I don't care if it's almost July, here it is, and it is July. And there are the fireworks running from the Plain States into the Corn Belt locales. Dry for the east, downpours across the Gulf Coast. So some better weather news there, Max, to lead off the first 10 days of the month of July.
Now, will the above normal area in terms of temperature shrink for that week of July 11th?
As we see it right now, the upper configuration would suggest kind of a westward regression of it. Again, we've had these troughs that carve out in this part of the country. They move into the Pacific Northwest, so we'll get a brief spell of things kind of retrograding. Yes, the upper air pattern can do that, actually kind of back up on the maps and charts, so we'll push some of the heat here to the northern plains. Across the deep south, readings about average or below on temperatures. And we keep an active weather pattern as well for parts of the northern and eastern Corn Belt. Moisture is welcome here. The tropics are busy, and the monsoon set up over the southwestern states too.
The week of July 18th, how hot then?
Here are these temperatures, and again, about normal over many areas of the central Corn Belt, the western states, a little above over this part of the country, a little below as you get up towards the Sioux, and the moisture plume continues on where we need it across much of the Corn Belt, Plain States, and points southwest.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
At Max's Tractor Shed this weekend, Mr. Larry Plapp, after 30 years of teaching agriculture, decided it was time to wrap it up. But his students wouldn't let him go quietly. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Store Lock Tool Cabinets. You'll find a variety of configurations, a variety of colors. There must be one that you'll find just right for your shop. Go to their website, check out what they have to offer, then give them a call at storelock.com. At Badger High School in southeast Wisconsin, Mr. Larry Plapp decided this spring he'd turn out the classroom lights for one last time. But his students, who really thought he had done a tremendous job over the years, oh, and by the way, their parents too, decided he needed a special gift. So they decided to give him a tractor. No, not a toy tractor, a full-size antique tractor. Oh, but it gets better than that. This is the Farmall that his dad had. The kids tracked down and restored superbly the 1954 Farmall Super MTA that Mr. Plapp's dad had all those years ago on a farm in Illinois. From what I heard, they worked hard to conceal that tractor and to keep it a secret. One educator in the community said of Mr. Plapp, he can connect to almost every student, and when he connects to them, their lives are probably changed forever. Congratulations to Mr. Plapp on his retirement and to his outstanding students and their parents for that wonderful surprise of the Farmall Super MTA. Well, let's see what they're selling this next week at Big Iron Auctions. Here's Mark Stock.
Well, hello, Max. We finish out the month of June on June 29th with a very large auction, just under 3,000 items selling. One of the most talked about sales is the Merle D. Schwartz Estate in Tell City, Indiana. This auction features a 2014 Ford F-350 4x4 crew cab service pickup, a 1994 Chevy Kodiak grain truck, a 2010 Gleaner A76 four-wheel drive combine, but more importantly, the talk is about the 20 different Alice Chalmers collector tractors. So whether you're looking for a four-wheel drive, a mechanical front, or a collector 220 Alice Chalmers tractor, it will sell to the highest bidder June 29th in Tell City, Indiana. Other sellers on the 29th of June include Dean and Lois Rager, their retirement sale in Inman, Kansas. Larry Ross is retiring from Arnold, Nebraska. Neil Fanning is retiring from Tuttle, South Dakota. Robert Schroff Estate in Strasburg, Colorado. Also SJDN Family Lasingen Farms LLC in Mound City, Kansas, and the Timothy Sin sale, the retirement auction, Sabetha, Kansas, features outstanding equipment. All of this quality equipment sells with no reserve on June 29th. Check it out on bigiron.com.
It's another week here on This Week in Agribusiness, which means it's time to get to know another FFAer. And this week we're meeting Mia Hillebrand. She just completed her year of service as State Secretary for Wisconsin FFA. Mia, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Mia, what was the highlight of your last year serving as the State Secretary for Wisconsin FFA?
Yeah, in the state of Wisconsin, there's 10 sections that section off the state, and I represent southwestern Wisconsin, otherwise known as Section 4. And I have the opportunity to be able to visit all 28 schools that I cover throughout my section. And being able to visit those schools, I get to see the different agriculture departments, their passions for agriculture, and some of the stories that these students have, whether they're involved in FFA or not involved. And that's something that I highlight throughout this year and something that I hope to continue throughout my career.
That is fantastic. What was it, Mia, that made you want to put on that blue jacket in the first place?
I was asked by a senior in high school to be a part of the livestock vision team. Now, my family is very strong in agriculture and has a passion for being involved. Now, I didn't grow up necessarily being like, I am a big part of agriculture. I raise livestock. That's not something that I grew up doing. My family, or my school district was not very passionate about agriculture. It's not a very urban but rural school type of thing. So a senior in high school asked me to join the livestock vision team. And little did I know that that would take me to the state level competition as an 8th grader. And that really sparked my passion to be involved in the agriculture industry and share the story and get more students involved, whether they're a part of agriculture or not a part of agriculture.
And now you've served as state secretary. What is next in your life, Mia?
I just graduated from Southwest Technical College with an agriculture business and animal science degree. I plan to attend the University of Wisconsin-Platteville for agriculture education. And my career goal is to be an agriculture teacher and give different perspectives to students, being involved, whether they want to go to college in a technical trade or continue to going to a 4-year, or sometimes they may not have any agriculture experience and want to go into the field, and encourage them to pursue their future career.
That is so important. Mia, well, we certainly wish you the best of luck. We need educators who are going to bring up the next generation of agricultural leaders. So we're glad to hear you're on that track. Thanks for talking to us this week.
Thank you for having me.
A global fast food chain has a very high standard set for the products sourced from farmers that they'll be selling to their diners. And at McDonald's Corporation, I saw the other day they approved a new potato out of North Dakota. You had some discussions about meat recently.
I did. At the World Pork Expo, I had the chance to talk with Ernie Meyer, who's the McDonald's Director of Quality. We talked about the supply chain and the challenges that he's been dealing with over the last 2 years.
You know, supply chain issues have disrupted a lot of different supply chains across categories, and pork is not immune to that as we look across how things have happened over the past couple of years. But I tell you, you know, connecting with producers here at the Pork Expo is a great opportunity for us to connect our customers, the McDonald's system, to the producers and really hear their voice and what their challenges are and understand what they're focused on and where we need to focus.
Well, as you've been here and talking to producers about those very issues, what have the challenges that you've heard?
Yeah, so there's quite a few, right? So I think some of the things that we've heard and focused on, you know, staffing. I think everybody has been challenged with staffing. We have inflationary pressures that no one's immune to across the industry and across supply chains. High fuel prices, fertilizer, and other things have all been challenges that we're all, you know, faced with.
Ernie, let's talk a little bit about how much pork McDonald's uses comes from the U.S.
So we source nearly all of our pork from the U.S., but we also source some raw materials from Canada. So really all of our products come from either U.S. or Canada that make it into our finished products of Canadian bacon, sausage patties, and strip bacon.
That is something else. Now, let's talk a little bit about new suppliers. As you're looking to bring somebody on into this very large McDonald's supply chain, what do you look for, and how do you determine whether or not they'll be a good fit?
Well, we really focus on our values and integrity and what people stand for from a supplier perspective. So we're looking for somebody that can model our values and their organization, but also bring us challenges, right? Help us get better as we continuously improve, as we continue to move forward.
Now, that's tough to measure integrity when you're working with someone for the first time. You don't have that background. What do you use methodologically in your role to determine whether or not that's going to be a good fit?
So from a quality, food safety, and animal welfare standpoint, it's really about going to visit and spending some time with our suppliers, and we really want to understand how they do business. You can do a lot, you know, over the phone, but you can really see a lot more when you're boots on the ground. You're at a supplier, talking to people in the organization, and you can really understand how that organization functions.
So McDonald's and the supply chain team sends people out to all of these new suppliers to check in to see how they'd work within the system.
Whether it be McDonald's or our current suppliers that go off and work with our approved supply list, right, in the packing community, but we'll visit as well, right? We don't get to everyone every year, but throughout our supply chain and with our suppliers who help support us, we go out and try to make a big impact in that space.
Let's look out to the future. Product development. We love to see new products coming to market, new ways to use U.S. pork, get it out there to the consumer. Ernie, what's on the horizon?
Yeah, so pork is great. I'm not going to lie, bacon is my favorite. There's always an opportunity for product development as we look forward. McRib is coming back this year, which is a fan favorite. As we look toward the future of what that product mix might look like, honestly, it's got to earn its business. It's got to earn its place on our menu as we think about bringing things back on. Has to be customer demand and customer driven. And so not closing our eyes to anything new, but we want to make sure that it's highly sought after by our customers and it's a fan favorite.
That's Ernie Meyer, the Director of Quality at McDonald's. We also had the chance to speak about alternative meat products, and he said, Max, they are going to have to hold their own on the menu just like every other product out there.
It's an interesting business indeed, and they cut a wide swath for sure.
That's the truth.
Have a good week, sir.
Thank you.
And we hope you folks have a good week as well. Thank you so much for joining us here on This Week in Agribusiness. If you're going to be working in the field out there, producers, on the road or in the field, use extra care. Have a great week. Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Kubota. Shape your world. This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Case IH. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by Omax Communication in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.